Yes, I already watched the Love is Blind reunion and I'm behind on giving you my recap and review on it. But I'm sticking to my guns and I'm going to finish the dang thing because I said I would, so I'm going to do it. I kind of thought this reunion was boring. Sorry. It just wasn't as juicy as last year's reunion. Hey everybody, I'm Elise. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you for stopping in, checking out my channel. Don't forget to do all the things that YouTubers ask people to do. So let's go ahead and start off the reunion with, obviously, Nick and Vanessa will be leading this reunion. I think Vanessa did much better at this reunion than last year's, if you know what I'm talking about. And you see that the couples that made it to the end of the aisle are sitting next to each other. So everybody seems to be kosher. Nick and Vanessa first ask, all right, they direct the question to Milton and Lydia. So I'm assuming you two are still together. By the placement of Milton's arms around Lydia, you kind of assume they were still together. Plus, I hadn't heard that they weren't on the internet. And they say that, yes, they are still together. And we find out that it's actually been 1.5 years since this whole thing took place. So they've had a lengthy time together. I feel like Milton had really come out of his shell during this reunion. Like, I already loved his personality, but now I love it more. I mean, he just seems over the moon and extremely happy to be married to Lydia and that they've just been having the best time together. They ask how they've been doing and how his married life, and Milton just says, married life's great. It has changed him in more ways than one, but not in the cleanliness part. So yeah, Milton's still not clean. But the fact that he now wants to get home from work, he doesn't work late hours, he wants to get home to his wife and just be more a part of their marriage, that is something that he had never experienced before. I think that's wonderful. So that means that they're really, really happy together. And then Milton talks about how the relationship between Lydia and his parents are so great because Nick asks, how are Lydia and your family getting along now at this point? And Milton expresses, oh my gosh, they get along so great that Lydia talks to my mom sometimes more than I talk to my mom. And she hangs out with her more than I hang out with her. And that Lydia has really brought out a more compassionate side of his family. It sounds like the way Milton describes his family is that they are more about having goals, setting goals, reaching those, being very determined and driven to accomplish as much as you can throughout your life. That sometimes they are not on the more loving and compassionate side, and that Lydia has brought that to the family, and now it's shining through with how Milton's relationship has evolved with his parents. And Lydia is like, when Milton's getting on my nerves, I can just easily call his mom and let her know. And then she's like, hey, Lydia, let's go get dinner or lunch. Let's go do something. So I think that's great that the dynamic between that family has really shifted and evolved. And then Vanessa and Nick go, let's do a recap of their whole relationship since they've been married. So they made a little video of what life has been like after Love is Blind. And we find out that Milton and Lydia actually got married again. They had a ceremony in Puerto Rico, with family members and friends. And it seems like it was a really good time. So I'm so happy that they're still together. I love, and I'm just very thankful I'm happy that a couple came out on the other side on Love is Blind. Did you like how I said that? So how Nick and Vanessa shift the conversation over to Izzy and Stacy is Milton brings up that he is planning ahead for the future, really working on their 401k. This is a way for Vanessa to go, oh, speaking of finances, Izzy and Stacy, which obviously everybody laughs because we all know that they were able to take the conversation over to Izzy and Stacy because finances was the big reason that Stacy started to feel uncomfortable. I think Stacy was always uncomfortable getting married. I think that Stacy is going to take a very long time to get married if she does get married. And that is if somebody lives up to the standards that Stacy has set. But it just seemed like she was looking for the smallest thing to not have to get married, in my personal opinion. Or she might have loved Izzy, but I don't know if I don't know if she's going to love somebody enough to make that commitment. So, Vanessa goes, speaking of finances, Izzy and Stacy. So did we end up dating after the finale? And they both shake their head, no, we did not end up dating after the finale. We all probably saw coming. Like I said, I don't know if Stacy was ever going to go through with the marriage. It did seem like she was trying to find every little thing to possibly not have to go through with it. And maybe she was doing that not on purpose, but that's what sometimes it seemed like from a viewer's perspective, in my opinion. So Vanessa asked what happened after the wedding, and Izzy and Stacy explained that they decided after the wedding day that they needed to take like a week to kind of gather their thoughts, and they decided to meet up, go out to dinner, and then when they went back to Stacy's place, Izzy said that he could just feel like Stacy was not in it. I think that Izzy wanted to start from where they were, and Stacy wanted to restart. So I think their idea of how they wanted the relationship to go wasn't the same. And it just makes me wonder that if Izzy was willing to continue to date but could feel that Stacy was already out of it, it makes me kind of wonder if Stacy could be out of it so quickly, how much was she really in it to begin with? And maybe she realized finally too through the experiment when they got close to saying I do that she needed a way out, and so she was trying to figure out ways to not have to say yes, and she came up with a lot of different reasonings behind not saying yes, but truthfully, she just didn't feel it. I mean, that's to be honest. I was even listening to a podcast, and Izzy said that when he went out with her family or went out with her friends, the first thing they asked was like, did you go through the finances? I mean, I think it's great to have stability and to have somebody that brings certain financial stability to the relationship. But what about love? I mean, I know love can't buy you everything, but I mean, wouldn't she wanted to truly love somebody? There's just things that you can work on, like getting his credit score up. And I feel like if you truly love somebody, you would be willing to work through those. But if you're just marrying somebody because you feel like the financial stability meets your needs and meets your standards, I mean, how in love are you really going to be with some of these people? You might just be marrying them for what they can give you. And I don't know. If Stacy keeps in this pattern, I mean, it hasn't worked out for her for a reason. She wouldn't be on the show if her choices of men and her pattern was successful. She wouldn't be on the show. So hopefully she learned something from it, and Izzy too. But in all honesty, just because somebody can take care of you and give you everything you want and meet your standards doesn't mean it's going to work. There's so many other things to it. But after Izzy, he point blank asked, are you even interested in dating me? And she said, no. Wow, you jumped out of that real quick. Just saying. Very quickly. She goes, all right, yeah, I don't want to. And Izzy leaves. He walks out. Izzy's gone. And I think that says a lot about the whole situation is Izzy walked out and hadn't talked to her in a year until They ran into each other at a bar in Houston. That is how they, I guess, not kindled their relationship, but had to finally speak and gain some common ground. And that is how they've been able to be kosher and be acquaintances or friends. But then we shift over to Johnny. Johnny is the next one. And this one kind of shocked me. I mean, I was kind of taken aback by this situation, but Johnny and Izzy had a past in the pods, and we saw that at the barbecue, everything go down. But is Johnny still dating Chris? Because we saw at the barbecue that Johnny and Chris ended up hooking up after they both left the pods and went home. They ran into each other at the airport. And this one kind of threw me off. Like, it made me think of Chris so differently than I had expected. But Johnny ends up coming out, and so does Chris. And they both announce that they are not together. And they go on to explain that it was Chris's fault why they're not together. Because Johnny and him were together at the barbecue, dating, and then Chris had to leave for a wedding. Now, why Johnny wasn't going to this wedding, I don't know, but she wasn't. And on his trip and that wedding weekend, he ended up meeting somebody else, and he ghosted Johnny, basically. Like, after having her back and fighting for her and seeming like he was really in love with her, he ended up ghosting her and not even telling her that he met somebody else that he was in love with and that he now lives with and says it's his person. He didn't have the gall to tell her, which is, I think, messed up. I mean, yeah, Johnny didn't do great in the pods, but like, you chose to date her. You could at least be like, hey, so I guess we're not truly dating, because I think if you were truly dating and in a relationship, you would have called her to tell her, hey, I'd like to not be dating anymore because I found somebody else. Like, you actively found somebody else while saying that you were in a relationship with Johnny. I don't know how much of a relationship that is. And I think that's really rude of Chris. I think that's rude. And the way Johnny found out that he was dating somebody else was because her friend saw him out with somebody else like 2 weeks later. So while he's gone, he just doesn't talk to her. And then her poor friend figures out that he is dating somebody else and has to call Johnny and tell her. But I guess Johnny and Chris have made up. Johnny's over it because they're sitting on the couch and they're saying, I'm sorry. And Chris is admitting that he did her wrong, but that he doesn't like confrontation and he doesn't like to let people down or tell them what they don't want to hear, and that he needs to get over that. Yeah, you do need to get over that, because just because you didn't tell her what was going on doesn't mean you didn't find a way to hurt her feelings. You did. That would hurt anybody's feelings. That's very immature, Chris. Very immature, in my opinion. I don't care how nice you are. That's dirty. And if I was that girl dating him and living with him, I'd be concerned. What, are you one day gonna walk to the bar across the street, down the street, find somebody else, and then pack your bags and leave and not even tell me? But anyways, Johnny is actually dating somebody now too. So is Chris, obviously. And Chris is obviously dating somebody. And then, of course, we have to go on about the tiff between Johnny and Stacy and Izzy that took place at the barbecue. Izzy did say that he privately did apologize for the way that he handled the Johnny situation. He said that he should have chosen a better choice of words. It's not that he regrets what he said necessarily, but he regrets the way that he said it and how he went about it, which I can agree. The way that he delivered his feelings and the way he delivered his feelings towards Johnny and how he felt about their relationship in the pods and the things that took place was just mean. And then, of course, there's Stacy and Johnny about to have like a tit for tat. I think that Johnny feels like Stacy owes her an apology because she felt like Stacy was trying to sabotage her relationship with Chris, which, come to find out, Chris was going to sabotage it for him. Vanessa's like, what happened between you, Stacy, and you, Johnny, during the whole pods? Like, when did this all start? How did this come about? And Stacy starts to explain it. But Stacy starts to explain, like, I obviously was keeping to myself, but I did get close to some of the girls in the pods, and they did come over and tell me the things that Johnny was saying about me behind my back. And as she's trying to explain why she has beef with Johnny and that they're not each other's cup of tea, Chris starts talking to Johnny on the couch and whispering to her to say, like, I'm sorry. And Johnny's like, what? And she was trying to listen to Stacy, but obviously she decided to give Chris more attention instead of her going, hey, Chris, like, be quiet. She goes, oh no, like, I'm sorry, I had to tell my truth. And this is all why Stacy is trying to talk to Vanessa and talk to Johnny and the whole cast about, or not the whole cast, but some of the cast members about how she feels and why she felt the way she felt towards Johnny and how the beef all came about at the barbecue. But Johnny's not really even listening to her, and it's rude. It really is rude. I think that if someone's talking, whether you like what they're saying or not, you should have enough respect to look at them in the eye and listen to what they're saying. And Vanessa finally goes, so, Chris, Johnny, what are y'all talking about? And they're like, oh, nothing. Chris is like, oh yeah, we're just like catching up like old friends do. Vanessa asked Johnny, like, is this how it all happened? She's like, well, some of it happened in the pods, like Stacy was saying. But I think some of the things that I said in the pods was petty. And it was petty, some of the things that she said about Stacy. The whole reason that I got mad at Stacy at the barbecue was because I knew that they were talking about me. And Izzy chimes in and says, no, she came over and was not talking about you at all at the barbecue. She was just coming over to talk to me. And honestly, they re-roll the tapes, and no, Stacey was not trying to talk about her. And when Johnny came over there, she did come in hot by saying, like, I know you all probably telling lies. And Stacey was like, no. But Stacey was extremely rude to her back. She said that she was basically an awful person. Stacey calling somebody a shitty person to their face is just mean. I think Johnny said more things about Stacey out of bitterness and pettiness. It wasn't right. But on the flip side, Johnny was completely right. They were never going to work out. But here's the fun part. So after Stacey and Izzy ended things, Izzy ran into Johnny about a week and a half later. And they ran into each other because some of the cast members were out at a bar. And Johnny and Izzy ended up talking for about an hour, and then they ended up making out in, his Jeep. So I guess they have definitely worked through their issues. But, of course, Izzy wasn't really over the whole Stacey situation, and he felt like Johnny probably still held a little bit of a grudge from all the things that he said, but obviously not much of a grudge if she's willing to make out with him, right? Sounded like so high school. Like, hey, let's go make out in my Jeep. Because I didn't want to make out in the bar in front of some of the cast members. Also, would have been kind of weird because Chris was at the bar, actually, Johnny's ex, with his new girlfriend. So such a weird dynamic, huh? So Johnny and Izzy gave it a little bit of a go, maybe 2 hours worth of a go, and decided they were right for each other. Vanessa starts talking a little bit more about Izzy and Stacey's dynamic again, and Izzy said that they did run into each other again at a bar in Houston. And Stacey's like, I don't even go out that much, but yes, we did run into each other. So when they ran into each other, Stacey and Izzy, they both discussed how they decided to not like hash it out, but definitely start discussing their relationship and how they're going to move forward as friends. But this is the funny part, is he's like, yes, we keep running into each other and she gives me dating advice. And I've actually got a funny story for you. And Vanessa's like, what? And this is when Izzy says that Stacy and him ran into one another at a cooking class on different dates in Houston. Houston's not small, but for some reason, the universe is small and they keep running into one another. So, yes, Stacy had taken her guy that she'd been dating out for his birthday to a cooking class, and they walk into the cooking class, and Stacy goes and looks over at her date. Would you like to stay in this cooking class? Because I just want to let you know my ex-fiance is actually in this cooking class with us. And he asked her, are you fine? And she said, yeah, I'm fine to stay. Obviously, you're the one that didn't want to be with him. And they decided to stay. I'm sure Izzy did tell his date as well what was going on. But this is the kicker. So the instructor assigns groups. And they all end up grouped together. And thank gosh there's probably wine in this. And they all have to hang out for this cooking class. So that's not awkward. I must say, I have yet to have that happen to me. So we go on to find out that Izzy and Stacy, whomever they took to the cooking class, I don't know why I'm using air quotes, but whomever they took to the cooking class is who they both are currently dating, according to the reunion. I am going to talk a little bit about the interview with Izzy on Nick Vale's podcast. And I'm going to tell you that when Izzy and Stacy ran into each other at the bars a year later, they did end up hanging out. He said they stayed together a couple of times, made out, but like never hooked up completely, because it gets murky when you hook up with somebody. So it sounds like they did try again, maybe because they were like, hey, we still have a love connection. Let's see if it actually works. Let's go for it. And I get them wanting to try again 100%, just because they had been through an experience that nobody else had ever gone through. So I get it. I don't get it, but like I get it, but I don't get it. We move on to the next guest of the evening, which is Lydia's close ally in the pods, Aaliyah, which we all know has a backstory. So, if you didn't watch Love is Blind, which I'm assuming all of you that are watching the show are watching me right now probably did watch Love is Blind, but if you did not, we found out in the first, maybe second or third episode of the season this year that Lydia had dated Uche, which was Aaliyah's love interest and the person that Aaliyah was going to marry in the pods. The producers did not realize that Uche and Lydia both knew one another, and it was because they never hoped to have couples that have dated in the past in the experiment. But it's a small world, as we've said before, so I'm surprised that it took 5 seasons to have 2 people enter the experiment that had dated previously. I don't understand how people can't find connections or like friends of friends, meaning that like I don't know how people aren't in these pods going, do you know so-and-so? Do you know so-and-so? Like, where do you work? What do you do? Like, oh, I have a friend that works there. I'm saying like, I don't know how there hasn't been more of a connection between people in these big cities that they've been choosing. That being said, they obviously, having this history, it would compromise the experiment, especially because you got Uche on one side of the pods talking to somebody that has an interest in Lydia, and you got Lydia on the other side being able to talk about Uche in a way that is not supposed to be revealed, because you're supposed to fall in love blindly. They start off by talking about the friendship and bond that Lydia and Aaliyah formed in the pods. It was a very close bond, and they seemed to connect on many levels. When Aaliyah was talking about Uche, she really probably understood where she was coming from, which bonded them in a way that other participants wouldn't be bonded. So I don't really know. I don't think that Lydia had ill intentions, but it would make sense for her to be navigating towards Aaliyah because she probably does see herself in Aaliyah because Uche is picking somebody she feels like is similar to herself, and she knows how Uche is in a sense. So obviously when Aaliyah's coming back discussing Uche, she has probably a lot of things to say because she's been there, done that. That being said, you get a good recap of their friendship and you really start to understand why they were so bonded, but also why that bond did fall apart. Nick goes in to discuss how the producers decided to go about the situation when they found out that Uche and Lydia had a past dating history. So the way that they went about it was they were going to initially let Lydia and Uche go from the experiment. They weren't going to let them participate. But Uche and Lydia both separately talked to the producers and said they're not interested in dating one another, that they're interested in dating other people, and that they promise not to reveal their past history with each other to anyone. They just said that they wouldn't do it unless given permission to. What ended up happening was they both did find love interest that they wanted to pursue further. And once they figured out that they had these interests that they wanted to get married to, the producers did eventually allow them to tell their significant others. Did they go about it the right way? I don't know. I think that they navigated this situation as best as they could because it was something new. I don't think it's fair to let people not be able to find love because they have a past dating history, when a lot of us have a past dating history. It's not fair that we don't deserve to find love because we didn't plan on finding someone we dated beforehand in an experiment that we chose to go into. I think that they should have been allowed to pursue relationships and be a part of the experiment. I mean, they got on the show, and if they hadn't gotten that deservance of moving ahead, Lydia and Milton wouldn't have found each other and be together right now. So obviously, I agree that they should have moved on with the experiment. Now, obviously, producers were concerned that it would compromise the experiment because they did know background history, and I think a part of it did, because once they were able to reveal who they knew and who they dated in the past to the people that they were currently dating, because they wanted them to be able to be transparent so that they're not entering in a relationship lying off right off the bat, Lydia did have a shit ton of word vomit. I mean, the way she was talking to Aaliyah and telling Aaliyah so much information that Aaliyah should have been able to figure out on her own and not respecting her boundaries was not good. Lydia just was like, oh my gosh, now you know my secret? Let me tell you everything about Uche. I mean, she went in so hard that I think that she compromised Aaliyah's true experience, and I don't think that was Lydia's intentions, but it's what happened. And I think on the flip side, Uche was feeding Milton bad information too and not letting Milton figure out how he felt. Luckily, Milton wasn't like Aaliyah. Aaliyah allowed everything that happened to compromise her feelings, and she chose to leave. But Milton did not let it deter him from this experience and experiment. He was like, no, I don't really give a shit what you're about to say, Uche. I could care less what you got to say, Uche. You can tell me whatever you want. I'm probably going to take it in one ear and out the other, and I'm going to move on and do my thing, which is how everybody should be. Because sometimes you got to figure out what you need on your own, and having somebody else's opinion is not going to help. You got to do you. And your opinion is the only one that truly matters because you're the one who has to live with your choices. So I think that Milton was just stronger in that. But on the flip side, I think if Lydia hadn't word vomited, Aaliyah could have easily ended up with Uche. And I don't think Uche is a great catch. I do not think that he is somebody that was deserving of Aaliyah. And I think Aaliyah dodged a bullet, based on what I saw on the show. But I do understand what Aaliyah is saying in this reunion, that Lydia did not respect her boundaries and did not allow her to have a true experience. And I think finding out that Lydia and Uche had just slept together that same year, like in January, and it was like May or June when they were filming, that was just too close to home. And I would have been like, I don't really want to get caught up in Inaugural mess. But you can tell the relationship between Aaliyah and Lydia is just not good anymore. After everything that came out and happened, it's not the same between them two, and they did not keep that bond that they formed in the pods. I think that Aaliyah thought it was a false bond, and I don't think that she has truly forgiven everything that occurred. They do ask the cast members, do you think that it was fair for the producers to allow them to go forward in the experiment? And everyone does agree, and I agree too. And we do find out that Aaliyah has ended up in a relationship. So clearly, everybody did end up in a good place. Now, Uche, hell, I don't know where the hell he is. Uche didn't show up, which, is anyone surprised? I'm not. But even though Aaliyah has found love, we do find out that Aaliyah and Uche tried to date after the show had ended. And Aaliyah said, I got barbecue Uche, I did not get pod Uche. And I think that she was hoping for pod Uche, and pod Uche was probably a fake facade and it was not real. And then we honestly go on to figure out if anybody has communicated with Uche after the show. And Izzy's like, not a fan, man, not a fan. And I'm really not a fan either. Apparently, he was talking mad crap about Izzy in the pods into girls. Like, he was talking him down. Probably because he was jealous. And Izzy kind of found out about it and was like, bro, don't like you. Don't like you. Uche, I guess, texted both Lydia and Aaliyah the same text. Like, text me if you need to know anything from the show airing. Basically, he copied and pasted, and efficiently the same text message that Lydia received from Uche is the same text message that Aaliyah received, and they did not respond. Uche awkwardly also texted Milton on his wedding day and was like, hey bro, heard you got married. I'm here to talk if you need anything. I think that all of this discussion explains Uche in one big package. Okay, so now we're switching gears to Taylor and JP's relationship. The couple that only made it to Mexico and didn't make it past Mexico. They come out, they sit on the couch. Taylor is looking fabulous. JP is just awkward. Like, there is no other way to put JP. I think he's just awkward. Everything that he says isn't always well thought out, because I really think that he is just such an introvert. I don't feel like he belongs on the show, TV. They go on to talk about their relationship. They do like a recap, and you can definitely feel the awkwardness through every clip that is recapped. I mean, I would have probably just stopped talking by a certain point, and Taylor kept trying. You can tell she's trying. But JP says, I could tell that Taylor was not interested in me as soon as she met me. And when we got to Mexico, it was extremely evident that she was not in it for the long haul. And Taylor goes, that's not true. I really was trying. You can see in the clips that I was trying. And by the clips, it does seem like she was. But she goes, but you were off-putted by me wearing makeup. Which I thought was it was just not a good comment to make on JP's end. To be so critical of her and the makeup that she wore, I mean, women like to get dolled up and dressed up. Just because you prefer women without makeup on should not define how you think about the person. And this is an experiment. Like Taylor said, I am here to fall in love with a person emotionally and to have an emotional connection. It is not based on looks or what I've dated in the past. It is by the conversation that we had. And Taylor said, the conversations that me and JP had in the pod, I would have thought we would have been together forever. But as soon as we left those pods, everything changed. But JP said, this is why it changed. In the pods and in the lounge, the cameras were not all up in your grill. They were just off to the side. They weren't as apparent as they were when we were in Mexico. When you've got two people on you filming, he says that he just shut down. And Taylor goes, but what about when the cameras were not in the room? Like, she goes, we could have had a conversation when they weren't present because they weren't there all the time. And you chose not to. And that is why he said, well, I could tell you didn't want to be there from the start, which I think is an excuse. I think that JP needs to man up and say, I didn't want to be there either. You were not my type. That is what this experiment was about. Picking someone based on an emotional connection that is probably not typically the girl you would go for in the real world, or the guy that you would go for in the real world, or whomever you would go for in the real world. It's based off of an emotional connection and not about the physicality. So, JP thought that Taylor wearing makeup made her appear phony because she looked more dolled up. I don't know how it's so phony to wear makeup. A lot of women wear makeup. But I guess guys just think that it's just this mask that you're putting on, and that when you take off the mask, you're just not going to look the same. And sometimes people don't if people are that great at makeup. But like, I think Taylor was just as beautiful with makeup on as she is without makeup on. I just think that makeup elevates a woman's beauty, and I don't think that it should be considered phony. Now, maybe if she's had a ton of freaking work done, then maybe it is slightly phony, but who cares? It's not about looks. Like, that is the whole point of this experiment. It's not about looks. When you get freaking old, only thing you got left is your personality and the other person's personality. The physicality will fade. You will get old and wrinkly and ugly. Well, I mean, maybe you won't be ugly, but you're getting old and wrinkly and your looks ain't gonna matter. So I think Taylor did a great job sticking up for herself. She put it in a way that made sense and wasn't rude. And JP said that the comment that he made about the makeup was placed incorrectly, that he preferred her without makeup, but he did not mean to say that she was phony or fake. But in the same breath, after Taylor says, I appreciate your apology and I accept it, learn from it, so in your next relationship, you don't say the things that you said to me about my makeup, about me being fake. In the next scene, after Nick and Vanessa have been talking, JP says, I just think girls that wear makeup are phony. It's like, don't apologize and then say the same shit that you said to her initially in Mexico, but apologize, because you're not apologetic. You don't actually mean your apology and what you've just said, because you still think at the end of the day that a girl that wears a shit ton of makeup means that they're phony and fake. That's it. It's rude, but that's your truth. And speak it. Don't deny it and don't apologize for it. They ask if JP or Taylor are dating anybody? And JP said he did find somebody. Probably asked one of his guys to hit on the girl for him. And Taylor says that she is basically talking to somebody that they're not official, but she is happy. The thing that Taylor said was perfectly said. She said, you know, out of every failed relationship, you can take what you learned into your next relationship. And that is all that anyone can ask for, is that you learn from your past experiences so that you don't repeat similar patterns in the future. And I definitely want to say thank you so much for stopping in, you guys. I love you all so much. Have a wonderful week, day. I don't know. Just enjoy yourselves as much as possible. It's about to hit winter. We're about to hit that seasonal depression. F that. It's going to be so freaking dark and cold if you're in the state that I'm in. But I don't know. Just take care of yourselves. And I love you guys. And I'm just so appreciative that you guys made it through the end of the video and stuck around. I'm more than thankful. So take care of yourself. Stay safe, stay kind, stay beautiful, stay wonderful, stay everything. And guess what? Love you guys. I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for stopping in. Bye.